Hello, happy Monday, and welcome to this Jyotish Astrology Live. Tulsi is going to be joining me any moment now, and we're going to talk about all things Saturn retrograde. I'm sure we're going to talk about Jupiter retrograde, maybe some of what Mercury's doing in the coming months, as well as Mars. There are some unusual dances taking place with some of the other planets as well. And I feel like it's a very Saturn retrograde kind of morning. I'm going to invite Tulsi in right now. And let's see, Tulsi. Can you request to join, Tulsi? And I will add you in.
There's our first rerouting. Let's see if you can hear me now. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. And so here's my other Saturn piece. My other speaker. Okay. So I think we're officially here and we're ready to go. It's Monday.
Absolutely. It was perfect. I was so happy when you said you were running a few minutes behind. I've been feeling it for weeks.
Lifetime. I'm going to actually put my earbuds in because I've heard from others that sometimes the sound isn't very good. So let me remedy that. Tulsi is an old friend of mine. In fact, we went to school together for many years. And we share a love of Jyotish and Vedic astrology and all things Vedic knowledge and wisdom. It's part of our shared worldview. And Tulsi, I know that you have such a unique and gifted perspective on the planets and the transits and what's happening from a spiritual perspective. And I'm excited to pick up where we left off in our last conversation. For those of you who heard our last conversation, I don't know, that was several months ago. We talked about retrograde Jupiter. Both of us were having time space experiences. Things have settled down a little bit in that area. But I'm curious to know where you are now. What's been showing up for you over the last several months? We've had Saturn go retrograde now. We're in the thick of the Jupiter retrograde phase as well. And of course, Mercury and Mars are going to be doing some very interesting dances over the coming months. So maybe we can throw in a little of that. And both of us tend to talk about Venus as well. So maybe there'll be some Venus stuff showing up. Give us a little recap of what you've been up to and what you're noticing with the major planets being retrograde right now. This is Jupiter and Saturn.
Thank you. And I'll just begin with a little mantra just to kind of seal our container and set the tone, if you don't mind. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha Om Aim Saraswati. Well, the end of April to the July 12th, we had that little window, that glimpse of Saturn in Aquarius that felt so quick. It was just this snapshot. And I think ever since Saturn moving retrograde, and especially back into Capricorn for me, there's been a quickening. I think the quickening could be absolutely accompanied by all those planets that we had in Aries, or particularly Mars and the North Node Rahu there. And I'm in the cycle of the North Node, so I felt this amplified quickening, and for lack of a better word, almost chaos, and in a really beautiful way, and a way that says, okay, I'm really thirsty for a shift to move on to the next chapter. And I felt this burst of energy that said, let's clean house, let's review, let's get into the subconscious, let's release those things that aren't really contributing, that may not be really growing corn for you anymore. And it was happening so fast, I feel as if in a month or 2 months I did a year's worth of work. Physical labor, internal excavation that felt very light. It felt very, okay, there's a door open, let's move through, because we all know that eventually that door shuts. So I felt as if my whole story was being rewritten from the inside out. And I think many of us are feeling since July 12th, at least for me specifically. Thankfully, we have these gifts to track. So here's a window for what's to come. That's Saturn in Aquarius. And then July 12th, Saturn moving back into Capricorn. Wow. January of 2020 is when Saturn moved into Capricorn. We've been living in that. It became so intimate that little window in April, I went, oh, okay. Or I guess we could say May and June. It was like this whole fresh energy, and to have it come back, I'm like, oh, that's familiar.
Yeah.
And it was almost as if there was a test. You know, I don't like saying we're being tested. And it's like, okay, you've been dancing with this for a couple of years. You're going to have a redo, another turnaround. And how can you bring new awareness, new response? How can you be more graceful with that second dance? And for me, it's been really refreshing. And I think it's interesting when we find that we're exercising what can feel like new skills, but especially if they're familiar, right? In a familiar relationship or partnership, which is with ourselves. I noticed myself and many of my clients saying, oh, I had this new skill that I'm ready to exercise. And sometimes I notice that it can look like, no, that's a boundary. Or like, oh, hey, can you not do that? It's really this beginning of exercising a skill can feel either a little too assertive, like you're banging your drum really strong, or like it's like, I'm still learning this tune. Don't mind me while I practice. And so I'm curious if you've been kind of noticing this integration with your people, you know, this there's so much, forgive me, I kind of
There's so much. Yeah, I think that we can't overlook the Rahu in Aries piece or the Ketu in Libra piece. And we talked about that a bit the last time we met. That is about boundaries. It's about restructuring relationships. And it's been intense for many. And at the same time, I'm feeling a lot of positivity around the restructuring. And of course, K2 is a helpful planet. Not that for me personally, but that doesn't mean there aren't challenges that come. But it's what is our orientation to the challenge? And I think that's a big piece of what Saturn teaches us is how to be in right relationship with structure, the body, cycles, rhythms, the laws of nature, ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're being asked to really refine right now, and you're right, we've done this already, and so there's a lot of familiarity with it, and at the same time, in a new way. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, so there that is again. And if we're not in right relationship with this awareness, or we're not consciously attending to this newness, then we might miss the significance of this. We might not utilize this sacred time in this way. And I really do consider retrograde cycles to be very sacred in that. It's like, when do we ever get a redo? Really, like in life. And so what a gift. I appreciate Saturn for his thoroughness.
Mm.
He is really asking that we do it in a thorough way right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many gifts in that. And there were a lot of disappointments over the last 2.5 years. So a lot of what we're getting to redo is clean up those disappointments, transform the disappointment into something new. And that's grief work. So if we're not willing to do our grief work, we're really going to miss out on this opportunity to make space for something very different moving forward. And I think it's going to be interesting. We're in this sort of 6-month phase of Saturn in Capricorn. And then he'll go back into Aquarius, which we've also done a little bit of, right? So how will that feel? I'm imagining, once we do this cleanup cycle, this real integration of what was that memo? Did we miss the memo? Well, make sure you don't miss it. What will it feel like when Saturn re-enters Aquarius? It's going to feel very different. And if we've been doing our inner work, and I believe on some level everyone's doing their inner work to some degree, but if we could raise the bar a little bit on our inner work right now, with this retrograde piece happening, could we really utilize this portion of time for restructuring in a way that is truly life supporting? That's the intention I'm holding right now, is what is the structure that best supports a life supporting momentum forward? And of course, that being in right relationship with the laws of nature. So that's where my orientation is. It's very body centered. I think there's a big theme of doing trauma work right now and cleaning up any residual trauma from the pandemic. A lot of us missed the significance of that trauma work during the last 2.5 years, how much of our safety issues emerged during this last 2.5 years. And of course, Saturn is so much about structure, stability, core needs being met, physical body needs being met. So I think there's great opportunity here. And I'm just, relishing in the opportunities that are available.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jupiter, we add in that Jupiter retrograde dynamic too. Like, talk about intensifying the knowledge available, the learning that's possible in this time. So I'm still seeing a lot of hope, a lot of positivity, but not without effort, because you and I both know none of the gifts of Saturn come without great effort. Yeah.
That's what's so beautiful about Saturn is many people say, "Oh, this is hard. I'm being denied." And Saturn really doesn't ever deny. Saturn just delays. And
Delays.
when it's so heavy and when the delay feels so long, it feels like it will never give. But when Saturn gives everything because you've put in the work that's built on that structure, like you're saying, that strong foundation. And what's that meeting point of Capricorn and Saturn, right? That right relationship with self that's moving into duty and commitment and consistency and combing over those patterns, those unconscious patterns that we may have left on repeat. And we can't underestimate the time period of a door swinging open, right? We're always doing work to some level. And when there's a door that's open, like right now, a little bit of work goes 3 times as far as when the door closes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think like let's pause here for just a moment, Tulsi. And I want to invite people to acknowledge the disappointments, the delays, the frustrations that you've met, maybe over the course of your lifetime, but certainly over the course of the last 2 years. And the significance of that. Because one of the things that a retrograde cycle can offer is hindsight, you know. And what I'm personally noticing is a lot of hindsight. Like, I get why that didn't work. Like, and if that had worked out, that would have not really served me fully, really.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's some real gift and blessing in the way that Saturn delivers his outcomes and the amount of delay or setback or frustration that he provides. And one of the things I've really learned from Saturn, and Saturn's my Atmakaraka planet, my rising and moon nakshatra are both ruled by Saturn. So, you know, I came in with a Saturn Mahadash, you know, Saturn's an old friend at this point. One of the things that I've really discovered and learned to appreciate about Saturn, I'm not saying it's always been easy, is that I really do see now that he has my best interests in mind. That it's actually a reverence now. Like when there's a delay, a setback, or a frustration, I approach it now in that way, that there must be a reason or something significant for this delay to be happening. And I don't believe in everything happens for a reason. So I want to be really clear on that. I'm not one of those people. I'm not a spiritual bypasser. I work really diligently on not bypassing my emotions, and I don't use Jyotish in a bypassy way. So what I mean by that is that, yes, there's a gift, and we'll find the gift. But there's something significant in the delay. And so can I appreciate the delay? Is there something I'm missing that maybe I need to go back and, you know, dig a little deeper? Or am I being protected? And I'm specifically using the word protection because I do see Saturn constantly protecting us. And if we can honor the delay, it's usually, or the disconnection, the dis-ease, it's usually a result of I'm not in right relationship with nature, my own nature on some level. So that's my invitation. And just acknowledging what these disappointments and delays and frustrations have been for us over the last 2.5 years. And I mean, Saturn's even been in his own sign, so it could have been more challenging than it has been. But we did go through a pandemic, and Jupiter was debilitated for a large portion of that. So by now, most of us have experienced some harshness over the last 2.5 years. And on a more expanded sense, and I'll let you speak in a moment, Tulsi, because I just want to tie this one little thing in as well on a collective level, because we're all experiencing these transits, whether we believe it or not. You know, they're influencing us. That this last 2.5 years has also been a pinch in the direction of let's collectively move into more right relationship with nature and the laws of nature. And many of us are heeding that call right now. Not everyone, but a lot of us are.
So
Mm-hmm.
share your perspective on this delay, frustration, the setbacks that come with Saturn, and even this cycle of cleanup that's revealing more.
Well, when I think of Saturn, that great timekeeper, duty, commitment in Capricorn, we're working hard. We're rising to the
Mm,
occasion of production, right? Of
mm,
governing, of power. And when we move into that with any quickening that's beyond the pace and rhythm, talk about Saturn being a Dhanishta star,
oh,
right? The
yeah.
star of symphony, right? That
Love my Danishta.
right, that greater rhythm and pace. And if you're
Mhm.
dancing to a song and you're one step ahead of the beat, you're missing the rhythm that's holding you.
Mm,
And that constellation is
mm,
ruled by the drum, or Shiva's drum, the damaru, we could say, or flute. And what they both have in common is that they're hollow.
mm,
And quite often we try to fill space with our power, with our energy, with our agenda. And there's nothing wrong with vision. And the Saturn here in Dhanishta says, be a hollow bone, like the
mm,
instrument. And when you can open and land in that right relationship with self, then the rhythm and pace, that's the tune that's playing in this moment, can just flow through you and take you.
mm,
And so I think many of us on some level, right? It can be completely unconscious, and I'm seeing it really clearly. There's some place in our life where Capricorn is that we may not be fully standing in our own integrity of our convictions or our beliefs, and we're cleaning that up. There's a dance, and there's a partnership in that dance. It's
mm,
us and nature, and so it's that slowing down,
mm,
of what am I missing?
mm.
How can I show up a little more completely in that clarity of who I am and what I'm offering? I think so many of us have been trying so hard to tap into our heart's offering that we can forget that if we're that vessel and work selflessly, then it can flow a little more easily. But the moment we try to control or grasp, Saturn can be like, let's have a pause
Mm,
so we can get rerouted.
mhm.
Rerouted to that deeper listening of what does want to be offered here, right?
Absolutely.
Right? Who wants to receive that offering?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm having my nodal return on top of that, and
Mm,
it's like, it's not what do I want to give. I love giving all my things. What wants to be received?
mm-hmm.
What is the other needing from me in this moment? You were about to say something.
I was just going to add the body. At the end of the day, it's the body that determines
Mm.
what is received, what is given. And that's the restructuring here. You have a beautiful expression of Dhanishta, which I love that space quality. And I think that's that Saturn reminder of the delay. I mean, we're being asked for the pause. And if we haven't been pausing sufficiently, Saturn will get louder and louder. And it's why Dhanacharya is so important. And our meditation practices, our physical movement practices, our grief processes. Grief doesn't move if we don't pause.
Mm.
You can't grieve when you're too busy, right?
Absolutely.
So, and that's what July was for me. And, I'm 42 now. I just had a birthday.
Happy birthday.
And every year, sun dips into my eighth house. And every year, it is the pause of pauses, and like nothing moves. And I go through my deep Scorpioness and dark, dark, dark stuff. And this year, I think I finally got the download, but it's taken 42 years. It's like,
yeah, this is your rest cycle. And you really need to make it way more intentional than just knowing it. Like, you need to even go deeper into this very sacred pause. And it was a hard month. And I hear that from others. It was a hard month, that July.
Yeah.
But what came from that is that pause, that forced pause, and I was forced to pause, is even more clarity, even more alignment with my structures, even more business support, even more right relationship with my gifts and offerings and the vision, the dharmic vision for moving forward. And so the significance in the pause, the space, as you say, it is a non-negotiable. But when we don't allow for that or even cultivate that in our daily life and in our seasonal existence, the cycles and rhythms of nature, Saturn will force us into that. And that's often why we see dis-ease or disharmony arrive. So that's one of the ways to really honor Saturn's intelligence. What are some of the other ways that you know to be true? I imagine we have very similar ways, but that honors Saturn's intelligence. I know Saturn gets a bad rap. Everyone likes to really, Saturn, negative planet, blah, blah. I personally love Saturn, very grateful for Saturn. I don't know where we would be without him. Yes, there are challenges, but there are things that must be done in order to be in right relationship with Saturn. And when we don't, it gets very painful in this life. So what are your suggestions? And, when you tell a client who has significant Saturn going on, whether it be a Mahadash or even an Antar, or, Saturn's in their head, for example, or they're going through a Sadhisat, what is your recommendation or recommendations?
For me, I think the most accessible recommendation is commitment to your duty. And your duty can be waking up early, going to bed early, eating on time, right? Like you said, the dinacharya. Nature has cycles and rhythms. And it's so easy to fall into our own rhythm. And when we know this structure that's consistent and we tap into it, it holds us. It may not feel good. It may not feel comfortable. So many people say, oh, I'm a night owl. And I say, oh, let me guess. Around 10, you get a second wind. How did you know? They always say, right? But when we look at the deeper cycles of Ayurveda, at 10 is Pitta time. And if we're asleep at 10, then there's this structure and repair happening in the brain. And when you think, oh, I want to watch a movie, I want to go out, and you're in a Saturn period, and you say, I'm going to choose to go to sleep. Right? It's choosing the thing that might feel a little uncomfortable. Right? That's duty. It's like, oh, I'd rather go to the beach. It's a sunny day, and I committed to this, and then I show up. And so I always say, start small. Make a commitment. Perhaps it's on Saturdays. I did something Friday evening through Saturday evening for 6 months where I didn't use a phone. I didn't use the internet. Unless like a couple times if I'm meeting someone or I'm driving, I'm going to use the GPS or I'm not going to drive my car on Saturdays, or I'm going to fast until noon. Find something that's relatable. For some people, mantra is relatable. For many, and I love it when people are honest, I don't really dig mantra. Like, okay, have you ever gotten into fasting? Love fasting. Cool. How about this 4 weeks of fasting, a commitment to every Saturday, and like, oh, I can do that. Great. Try 10, right? You want to pick something that you're attracted to, whether it's fasting, being of service, right? Something that has a pinch.
Mm-hmm.
And you commit to that, right? There's that dual element of somewhat of a sacrifice. You're sacrificing your time, you're sacrificing being fed, sacrificing being paid, right? Whether it's service, and service doesn't mean for free. Maybe you give 50% off. And then you make a commitment. If 4 weeks on every Saturday feels easy, double it. And then commit to it and show up no matter how you feel, because Saturn's going to test you, right? I mean, it's like, oh, the internet's not working. Oh, right? And nature's like, can you show up? How about now?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for me, the number one thing is a commitment. I remember in a Saturn Antardasha, or a sub-period, I thought, I'd really like to be of service. And my uncle said, and just remember, that doesn't have to be for free. So I started teaching in drug and alcohol treatment. I wanted to be of service to people who needed assistance. And someone offered me a Saturday class, and I thought, I don't want to work Saturday morning. And then thankfully I could hear that little voice saying, perfect. Saturday morning, I didn't want to do it, but what did I do? I got up and I taught that class throughout my whole Antardasha. And you don't look for rewards. Not like, oh, Saturn's gonna reward me. No. It's that idea of you're not looking. You don't post it on Facebook. I just shared that with everyone. And it's, if you're taking selfies and posting about your donations and service work, that's no longer.
Saturn don't like that.
Saturn doesn't like that.
Doesn't like it.
As fun as it is, but the sun is like, hey, and Saturn's like, no.
We don't do that here.
Try again.
Oh my God, right? That's why I call him the grumpy old man. I imagine him sitting on the porch, rocking in his chair, just the non-changing reality. And he's not getting fancy. He's not getting big in his britches. He is set in his ways. And he's content in that.
Yeah.
And he's not going to change, and you're not going to change him. So there is that selfless service piece, and you bring to mind this interesting dharmic quality. So often, and Jupiter Guru, he is the Dharmakaraka. He is the expression, embodiment of Dharma and our duty, our soul's duty in this world. But the necessity of Saturn's role in our duty is essential. And that's that commitment and the effort that is required in the duty. So I think of Saturn more as the pulling the arrow back. And as we release the arrow, those are the benefits. Those are the results. Maybe that's more of the Jupiter quality, the receiving of that which is our effort. And we all have a duty. Every soul in this life has a duty from a Vedic perspective. Obviously that's our orientation. But there's a duty for each soul. And there's effort involved in that duty. So you make Saturn very approachable, which I think is important. Saturn's very misunderstood. And I'm curious, how do you help your clients, or what would you say to someone that is not living in right relationship with Saturn? And I mean, to some degree, none of us are really. Like, to be in full harmony with the laws of nature in our Western-centric society is impossible, really. We do the best we can. But what would you say helps people make those
most important basic adjustments.
Mm.
Ayurveda, obviously, it's like the science of Saturn, but share more about those pieces. Because I'm sure you're getting clients who are like, maybe they've never even heard of the importance of Saturn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so many have either heard difficult, hard, which validates their experience, or they know nothing. And I think that piece of reverence, right? I like to think of a band, right? There's many want to be the lead singer, right? The person on stage having fun, right? You see the lead singer and often they're dancing and embodying the whole thing. And then there's like the bass player, right? The timekeeper. They've got the same move and they're just going. And it's so interesting when, as a dancer, to lock into that, right? There's all the beautiful melodies and ornamentation of everything that lights you up. And all of a sudden, if it switches, that baseline didn't change. And so I think we can get so caught up in the shiny objects and to remember that baseline of nature, right? The sun is rising and setting. You're getting hungry, you're drinking, you're tending to this body temple that is all borrowed. We like to take some authority of this is my body, I'm going to do what I want. And I think if we can have a little more reverence of this body is borrowed, our time is borrowed, and approaching it with what would you do if your best friend gave you their child or their dog, and it's a responsibility. How would you look at it in that way of tending to the needs of that being that can feel very separate, right? And so for me, I think one of the best things is rest, right? Saturn loves consistency, but also rest, and that's that vata time. And sometimes I feel like it doesn't necessarily matter when you go to sleep. It depends who you are and what you need. But that key point of getting up before the sun, before 6 a.m., depending on what time of year, that vata time. Vata is that quick moving energy that just grounds. When you wake up during that time, it grounds you. You steep in, I think, the epitome of honoring Saturn, saying this is that grand rising, and I'm going to anchor and I'm going to witness that. And I'm going to watch that consistency of what am I choosing? Right? What am I choosing in my daily life? Yes, I can follow joy. Yes, I can follow Dharma. And I think so many people now, including myself, it's, wow, where am I out of alignment? Where have I placed attention on patterns that I'm so almost desperately trying to transcend, yet in that focus of trying to transcend, I'm perpetuating it. And so much of it is that pausing. It's almost like a tea ceremony, the Japanese tea ceremony. It's like, I'm going to sit and I'm going to welcome all the things. I think, it feels a little, for me, cliche because I've been meditating my whole life and I teach meditation and the pause of awareness. We don't even need to be doing anything. We might close our eyes, we might sit, and it's this serving of it all. Welcoming the fears, the shadows, the griefs, and awareness alone is healing. I think that's Saturn, right? You take it all to Saturn's feet, right? Jupiter says, let's go deep, let's philosophize, right? Venus says, let's be tender, let's embrace. I think if we place it at the feet of Saturn, right? That old wise man, you think of your grandfather, your grandmother. I would call my grandmother every Saturday, the last 2 years of her life. And what would I do? I wouldn't even try to have a conversation. I would listen. And I'd ask questions that I think might bring out a story. And if it didn't make sense or she got angry, I would just love her more. It wasn't about being right. It wasn't even about me sharing unless she asked. And it was that sitting and seeing the God, the divinity, the old wise, masculine or feminine, saying, teach me. And being open, even if I didn't agree, right? Even if I didn't want to, even if I wasn't available, I'd sit and calm my grandmother. And so I think my long story of how I would share and teach is like this reverence of the great timekeeper. That pulse doesn't stop. It's the heartbeat.
Yeah.
The heartbeat, right? That drum that keeps going. It doesn't miss a beat when the prana is flowing through us, right? The moment life begins, breath comes, and there's that rhythm.
Yeah. And breath being the ultimate timekeeper. And you mentioned Saturdays a number of times. So for those who aren't familiar with that, Saturn rules over Saturn Day. And it's a good day to honor and be in reverence to all things Saturn. And it's also a day of rest. It's a necessary day of rest. So that might be something to consider. Ayurveda is an excellent resource for structuring life in a way that is more in harmony with Saturn. And then when you fudge, you at least have a structure to come back to, you know? And we all need to fudge sometimes too. Having parameters, having boundaries, having containment support safety, in fact. And the body is, of course, very much ruled by Saturn. The ancestors are very connected to Saturn. So grief work, physical effort, physical labor. And it's always interesting because Saturn's considered the planet of hard work, and yet he's also the planet of enlightenment. So there's a lot to unpack there. But when we do our dharmic work in this world and we meditate and we take care of our body, we're accomplishing everything. And I know that I've been told in Saturn cycles, it will feel like you're doing nothing, getting nowhere, nothing's working, and in fact, you're getting everywhere. And that's a helpful reminder at times. It may feel like I keep putting in all this effort, but it's going nowhere. And I think one of the things that is really a powerful reminder as we close today, because this is the ongoing Saturn convo, I could see us even doing another one, but think about what you're doing today is actually what's setting you up for success 2, 3, 4 months down the road or 2, 3 years down the road. This is the foundation today, sets us up for success. And I think that's a big part of Saturn. It's the delayed result. It's not a fast gratification process with Saturn. So sometimes we have to remember that. Like, I may not see the reward of eating well today or taking care of my body, but 6 months from now, it will be worth it. Or, the meditation practice or whatever it is. Setting up systems and structures for your business, for your offerings, like that's meaningful, and it's going to create more ease and gentleness down the road. Final thoughts on Saturn and how we can connect with you, Tulsi?
I just want to reiterate that the short-term discomfort that leads to long-term pleasure, right? It's so easy to reach for short-term pleasure that really can lead to that long-term discomfort. And yes, you need to have joy and play, and holding the big picture of the short-term discomfort that leads to that long-term joy.
Yeah.
And I was reminded, and I really stood up to the plate for this one with this, what I felt like the past 2 months, I got more work and momentum than I have maybe in an entire year. The busier you are, the greater responsibility for your pause. You think, oh, I have a 12-hour day today and I normally meditate or have a pause for 30 minutes. Bump it up to an hour because you stretch time in your pause. Like you said, it's the arrow pulling back. And so not to underestimate the rest and the pause. When you're resting, you can think a little bit about work. And when you're working, you can also allow your mind to be at rest. Right? And finding that duality and that anchoring into the slowing down. What is the purpose of yoga, of meditation, but yoga sakuru karmani, right? It's not for the sake of meditation, right? And some people, oh, it's hard, or I didn't get anywhere. No, it's like, are you saying that? Oh, I didn't pull the arrow back for long enough, or if you pull it back part way, the arrow's just gonna fly a couple feet and drop, right? We don't need to critique how the pulling back of the arrow. It's not for the sake of the meditation, of the pause. It contributes to our action. And that's what I think I need to be reminded of is that prayer, that pause, that whatever that is, whether it's walking barefoot in the garden, sitting quietly, having your tea ceremony, it's informing your action.
He's such a good friend, really. He's the friend through thick and thin, steady, consistent, unwavering. And we can all use a little more Saturn in this existence, certainly. So thank you for all your reminders today, Tulsi, your wisdom, your embodied gifts that you bring to the world. And I know you love sharing Jyotish sessions with people. So certainly I'll link this video to you. Is there anything you want to share about your offerings right now before we close?
Thank you. It's such a joy to always be here with you. I cherish these moments, and
I do too.
Look forward to the next. And yes, I'm offering one-on-one sessions. I am taking a little break. I'm visiting family and doing a vision quest in Taos. And I just got asked to return to Music and Sky, a beautiful, sovereign community gathering that's happening north of Ojai in California in October. I got asked to speak on Vedic Astrology. I'm going to talk about the lunar nodes, and I'm going to get a discount code in the next few days. So if you're interested in that festival and gathering, it's really, really special, all organic food and camping and music and so many beautiful speakers, which with so much depth and consciousness and play. And so Music and Sky is coming up in October. I think that's the next thing I'm really excited about sharing with my Jyotish offerings.
Great. Well, we will look for more information about that. And I'll certainly link to you in this video so that people can follow you and connect there. And there's so much restructuring happening in my offerings right now. I think the best place to jump in would be my Soul Circle mini course, but ultimately just book in for a chat with me if you need resources for body and business from a dharmic perspective. Okay, Tulsi, until next time, let's stay connected, and we'll figure out what we're going to talk about next. But I'm sure it will happen in the coming months. Yeah. Blessings to you and to everyone who's listening today and the recording as well.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.